The skin, our biggest organ system in our body, or we can call it integumentary system. It has several layers, and we will start with the basement membrane, that a one cell layer, a single row of cells immediately adjacent and sitting on the basement membrane. Its cells are constantly undergoing mitotic cell division to produce millions of new cells daily. Hence, its alternative name is stratum germinativum or stratum basale. The next layer is the stratum spinosum. Spinosum means spiny, and this contains several cell layers immediately superficial to the basal layer, the stratum basale. It starts to accumulate pre-keratin protein that will be really important for the function of the skin. The stratum spinosum cells look like spiky because of the skin. As we prepare for microscopic slides, they start to shrink, but the desmosomes that connect adjacent cells together, they will hold on to. Hence comes the name stratum spinosum. Cells in the basal and the spiny layers, stratum basale and stratum spinosum, are the only ones to receive adequate nutrition via diffusion, passive transport, from the dermis. So as their daughter cells are pushed upward towards the surface and away from the source of nutrition, they gradually die. Next layer is stratum granulosum, or the granular layer. It's a 3 to 5 layer thick, contains thickness. It contains granules in the cell, and this granule is a waterproof material that will be secreted in the intercellular membrane, intercellular space, for protecting the skin's deeper layers from pathogens and chemicals or harmful materials. These are the granules that eventually will be secreted out. Above the stratum granulosum is the stratum lucidum. Lucidum, it's clear layer, but it's present only in thick skins. These are flattened dead keratinocytes, skin cells, and they are present only on the palm or the plantar surface of the foot. The last layer is the stratum corneum. This is the outermost epidermal layer, consists of 20 to 30 cell layers. The bulk of the epidermis is made up of stratum corneum, as we will see under the microscope. Cells in this layer are dead, and they are constantly rubbing off and being replaced by divisions from the deeper skin layer. So they are totally dead. The skin contains tons of keratinocytes. These are the keratin cells, and the majority of the skin cells are keratinocytes. They contain the keratin, a protein that gives the protective function of the skin. But at the stratum basale, we can also see some spidery black cells that they can produce brown to black pigment called the melanin. This melanin is protective pigment, and the tentacles of that melanocyte gives an umbrella over the nuclei of the keratinocytes at the stratum basale, so they shield the DNA from the UV light that can damage the hereditary material. The other cell at the stratum basale is the Merkel cell. It's a tactile cell, and it's a receptor, sensitive touch receptor that sends signals through a nerve into the central nervous system, into the brain, that something touched the skin. The last cell that we want to just talk about is the epidermal dendritic cell, or the Langerhans cells, that they play a role in the immunity, so the immune system, they relate to the immune system. They are in the border of Stratum Granulosum and the Stratum Spinosum. The shaded area is a different layer. Deeper from stratum basale is the papillary area, and this papillary area superficially is bordered by the basement membrane. I'm drawing the capillaries over there. It has a rich capillary supply, the blood supply all around, that will supply the epidermis eventually, and also several free nerve endings happens to be. Now, it is an uneven surface, and there's some ridges, and these are the dermal papilla, or many of them dermal papillae, that gives our fingerprints. They are very very strong in the hands and on the legs, on the foot. Reticular area is below, that contains, this is the deepest skin layer, contains arteries, veins, and nerves, as well as they contain a sweat gland that has an opening to the surface of the skin. The sweat gland, it's really important for temperature regulation, and also it excretes several materials, and also the hair follicles that contain also next to it, adjacent, an oil gland. These are the glands for the skin. Now, these layers, below this layer is the hypodermis, that is made up of adipose tissue, fat tissue. The thickness of this layer can be different. Hypodermis or subcutaneous layer, this is where you usually get your flu vaccine. The papillary and the reticular area is called the dermis of the skin, the deep layer, and the superficial layer of the skin is the epidermis. Epi means above the dermis. So epidermis, dermis, these are the two layers, and the hypodermis is not really counted as part of the skin.